Area Forum. Of course, we had all the 4 seasons today, didn't we? And I walked from one end of the town centre to the other, and I went through all 4 seasons. You know, it was. I think Vivaldi was following me in spirit. A few sage nods there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bedfont, Feltham and Hanworth Area Forum. We've got a pretty packed agenda tonight, so we want to get through as much as possible. So I will be quite strict on time. But I'd like to start with apologies for absence or lateness. Does anyone have any of those, please? Samir Chaudhary. Well, she's just walked through the door, so she's not that late. I have Councillor Sidhu and Councillor Hanif Khan as apologies for lateness, please. Do we have any declarations of interest or any other communications from members? Councillor Kamal Chaudhary.
Sorry, Chair, just another apologies for absence. Councillor Paneet Gorawal as well. If you could add her name, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, residents, members of the forum, you're probably aware that shortly after our last forum on the 25th of November, a few days after that, we lost our dear friend and colleague, Councillor Javed Akhundzada, a man who I found to be, the more I got to know him, a very kind and a very decent man. Helped me a lot. So what I propose is, with the consent of all present, is that we stand in memory of Javed for a minute's silence, and Joan will keep that minute. So can I ask the forum to stand in memory of Javed Akhundzada? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. I will take a couple of comments, a couple of memories of Javed. Hina has asked whether she could go first. So, Hina, please speak.
Thank you, Alan. I'd like to say a few words for Councillor Akhundzada. Councillor Akhundzada was a good friend, a colleague, and a wonderful human being, and a loyal community person. It was his first term as councillor, but he has left a mark by serving residents of Bedfont, where he was a councillor, and I and Councillor Akhundzada closely worked as a team since March 2020 when we started Food Bank. His demise will never be forgotten, and we will always remember him as one of the best councillors who left us while serving the community of London Borough of Hounslow. Me and my fellow councillors will always miss him. My sincere condolences once again goes to Councillor Akhundzada's young family and his wonderful wife. It's very hard for her to deal with his sudden death. We all are supporting her in every way we can and will always be here for his family. We miss you, Javed Akhundzada, and you're gone too soon, will never be forgotten. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hina. Richard Foote. Do you wish to talk about Javed? Okay, yeah, that's what I'm not going to. I'll deal with that differently. you put your mic on, please, Richard?
Sorry, I thought it was on. It's a white light. Yes, I echo the comments made by Hina. I haven't known him for a long time, but the short time, especially when he was whip, I found him very fair in his actions and what he did, and he was, as I think has been said, a gentleman. And it's a shame, and one that's going to be missed by us all in the borough of Hounslow.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments on Javed? Kamal.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to take this opportunity to say a few words in memory of our dear colleague and friend, Councillor Javed Akhundzada. I met him at a meeting probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and straight away he struck me as someone who was very knowledgeable, intelligent, personable, and very easy to talk to, and we got on straight away. And as councillors for wards in the west of the borough, we sat on several panels and committees together, so had the opportunity to work together. And over the years, I got to learn quite a lot from him, and just really appreciated the time that we got to spend as fellow councillors. So definitely feel his loss, and just was an amazing colleague to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. Yes, Samir Chaudhary.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just echo what my 3 colleagues have said. Javed was a really great person, and he will be really missed within the whole borough. He just didn't work within just Bedfont in his ward, but he worked for the whole west end of the borough as well as the other end. And he will be really missed. Last area forum meeting, he was just sitting where I am now and where Councillor Chaudhary is. It just feels that he's here with us, but I'll just say that he was really great person. Whenever I've come across in the meetings or outside helping community, he's done a great job for everyone, for us and for London Borough of Hounslow residents. And I feel really sad for his family and his young kids, and we're always here for him, for his wife and kids, to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. I would just add that I suppose the word gentleman is an old-fashioned word that isn't used so much these days, but I really did find Javed to be a gentle man and a man of great kindness. And whenever I was out campaigning with him or anything else, he had a very infectious laugh, a quiet belly laugh, which is quite an achievement. And he had a twinkle in his eye. And I think people with a twinkle in their eye, you know, they've got something to offer. So we remember Javed. And let's carry his memory forward into all we do. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. If we can now turn, well, sorry, on another sad note, I'm sorry to have to announce that another former member of this forum, a long-serving Felton councillor, Councillor Mick Hunt, who I knew when I first came to this area some many years ago, passed away yesterday, I believe it was, in West Middlesex Hospital. His wife, Sonia, we think of her at this time. I will allow just Richard Foote to make a comment on that because he's asked me before we move on. But we will remember Mick Hunt at a future meeting, or the very next one. Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mick Hunt, I've known for many years. He served with me in my first terms on council in the 1970s. He sat with me when I chaired the housing committee. Mick was a very active councillor on housing matters in Feltham, and there are many people who live in council houses in Feltham to this day can be thankful for the work that Mick Hunt put in. An enormous amount of work, a very hard worker. Unfortunately, in recent years, he was not well. I visited him a couple of months ago, and he was obviously deteriorating quite a lot. He'd not been able to walk at all for several years now. So he was bedridden at home. So it was sad to see a big man like Mick that had been brought down to this at the end of his life. And I feel very, very sorry, and for the family that, you know, they're a very close family. So, yes, I can only say that Mick, my job as chair of housing was very much a person that backed me in a lot of difficult situations that we had in that period. But thank you for, we will, as you say, we'll remember a bit later on in the year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Can we move to item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of November and matters arising. So, looking for accuracy and agreement, starting with page number 1.
Can I raise an amendment, Chair?
Yes, you may.
It's unusual for the clerk to do it, but under apologies for absence, we've got Councillor Bishnu Gurung was absent due to mayoral duties. Can we amend that to gave apologies due to mayoral duties? Thank you.
And turning to the next page, members. And finally, the third page. Okay, is that agreed? If I can just add, I do have one little matter arising from that. Jenny Tweedy was with us in the audience last time, and she asked about the community buildings review. The current situation is that the community buildings review, there is an assessment of all community buildings. And the report, the final report, that was a horrible pop, will be out in October 2022. The idea is to assess all of our community buildings to ensure they're fit for purpose, to consolidate them for better usage, and that we will not have any loss of capacity. So hopefully that answers Jenny's question. I'll pass that on in any event. And October will be the report will be coming out. Okay, so moving to item number 4, and that is, we have an event this summer. The London Borough of Hounslow is very good at coming up with events, and this is an absolutely lovely one. So, but again, can I remind members, after Aretha's spoken, I'll be quite tight on time because we need to get through. Can we please welcome Aretha George with the Summer of Culture presentation? Aretha.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me at the meeting. I just want to talk about Summer of Culture. My name's Aretha George. I'm the Culture Manager for Hounslow, and I'm also leading on this programme. So Summer of Culture is a 3-month programme from June to August. It's about sport, art and culture, and the programme is really designed to provide opportunities for people to engage in culture right across the year, wherever they live in the borough and whoever they are. So we aim to promote and highlight existing community events that are taking place. We want to support communities and artists to deliver local activity within their communities, but also to raise creative ambition across the borough with our cultural providers, and we're working with them on that. Just very briefly to say that Summer of Culture is part of One Hounslow's recovery plan, and we will be aiming to also address some of the other areas in this plan, such as providing opportunities for people to volunteer, skills development, working with our community organisations and shaping activity and helping build connected communities. But we've also got the agenda of helping to keep people healthy with our Women's Euros that I'll come on to talk about in a bit. Activity is really centred across 3 pillars. So we're spotlighting creativity to highlight spaces. So that's spaces throughout Feltham, Brentford, Isleworth, all across the borough. We're also looking for people to tell stories about their spaces, what they love about being in Hounslow, what they want to improve, but in creative ways. We really want to celebrate our people, so celebrate the rich cultural diversity of Hounslow, and really encouraging people to get involved and engage with their communities. But also we want to support Hounslow's ambition to be a destination, so that we are a borough that people want to come to and they can experience the culture that we have. I mentioned the Women's Euros. This is taking place in July, so right in the middle of our programme, and is a massive opportunity for us to welcome new visitors into the borough. So the Women's Euros will take place at Brentford Community Stadium, and our leisure team are working very closely with our sport providers to make sure as many people as possible get involved in the Legacy programme. So on this slide, there are a few of the London targets. Brent with Wembley Stadium, and Ealing because of the location to Brentford and Hounslow. And we're really trying to encourage women and girls to engage in football, not just as players, but also as coaches and referees. And there's a large schools pack that's gone out and quite a lot of engagement around this to make sure that communities are involved. And I just wanted to talk briefly about how we're engaging people as well. So I'm speaking at various forums, and that's continuing towards the end of this month and probably into next month, where I'm trying to get input from people about what they want to see and what they want to do. And you'll see in our leisure centres, in our libraries, there are little comment cards, and we're encouraging people to fill those in and tell us and help us shape this programme. And some pieces have gone out in Hounslow Matters, in the newsletter, in the e-newsletter as well. And we're working with our community development team, and we have Emily here today, to reach into those communities that we don't often hear from, so that we make sure that we're representing right across the board. I've also targeted a few audiences that we don't tend to hear much from on the cultural sphere. So that's our looked after children, children in care, etc., to make sure that their voices are being heard as well. And we've been working with Ealing and Hounslow CVS to make sure that we're really working with our community and voluntary organisations as well. And this is just a bit of a word cloud of what people have been saying that they want to see. Exhibitions, theatre, poetry and film really standing out there. Very briefly mention the community grant. This is linked to our Thriving Communities team. The community grant for Summer of Culture is about art, culture and sport. It's about making sure that we're reaching right into the community and that people have access to funding to be able to deliver events. We have a grant threshold that's £100 to £2,000 and then £2,000 to £5,000 to really encourage those grassroots community groups to take place. The grant actually is open until the 27th, midnight, so it's this Sunday. You can still get an application if you're interested in putting one together, and we do have a team that's supporting people with that. But if people have questions about their applications, they can contact Ealing and Hounslow CVS, who'll be able to support them with those applications. And finally, we're keen to hear from people who actually have events going on that don't need money to put it on, but they're going to be doing that and celebrating throughout those 3 months. So do email us, summerofculture@hounslow.gov.uk. Do email us if you want an application for the community grant. Let us know what you're doing so that we can promote it right across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Aretha. Looking around the room, I'll start with Councillor Samir Chaudhary.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to say it's very exciting to see Borough of Culture. Thank you very much, Athrina, and my hat on as a lead member of Leisure. I think team is working extremely hard, and we would like all residents and the groups to come forward, apply for the grant, get involved. It's really, really exciting to see when we've started looking at Borough of Culture and a few other bits. We've had a lot of people talking to us, and I think we've got I'm not sure what number was written in the email, how many groups we've already got who have contacted us and working together. But it'll be really nice to see from the west end of the borough people kind of coming together and working with this. And this will be something really, really good. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Samir. Candice Atherton.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I think this is brilliant. I'm really excited about the summer and hope to be involved in some way and get my children involved as well. I'm really glad there's going to be a call to action through Hounslow Matters. I guess my sort of desire is that as many children, individuals, adults get involved as possible. And I feel like, I hope people don't sort of turn up to something sort of almost by accident and then think, I wish I could have been, you see kids watching other kids do something really exciting and you can see that they're like, we didn't know about this. So I really hope that, I know you're working with the schools specifically around the women in the Euros, but like as much as possible kind of communication with schools to make sure that all the voluntary sector groups and things that are happening, they're being kind of like open and inclusive to new people coming rather than, just the people that are already engaging. So it'd be really great to see sort of a boost of children, young people joining new activities and getting involved. With the deadline on Sunday, I just wondered, have you been getting requests coming in? And if not, is there any chance at all that it might be extended? That was my only question. Thanks.
Can I? Yeah.
Aretha.
Thank you. So just to answer with the schools, yeah, absolutely. I went to the head teachers briefing. I've received several emails from head teachers that are really keen to be involved, and we will have a programme specifically for schools and for young people, but also making sure that we're working with our community development team to go right in to the community to make sure that we're hearing from those groups that don't often get heard and that families as well can participate. We have quite a few participatory events that we hope to be doing. With regards to the community grant, we've had quite an influx of requests for applications and quite a few returned now as well. We will see what the deadline is and how many we have, because obviously it's going to be competitive. But if we feel that we haven't had enough back based on what we've sent out, then we will consider extending. But the information has gone out. Hopefully this isn't the first time people are hearing about it. So we'll make that decision on Sunday. Thank you.
Thanks, Aretha.
Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Thank you, Chair. First thing is, I'm sorry, I'm a bit late, 5 minutes. I think the attendance list is still not closed, so hope I can sign in on time. The event, which is Summer of Culture, the themes is very good and very excited. We need this sort of things after 2 years of lockdown and people are stay at home. We are not seeing each other. And as you know, I'm also the mayor, and I would like to connect with the community as much as possible. But this COVID-19, which is disturbing us a lot, but however, is slowly and with cautionly is opening up. So summer will be the very nice, and hopefully our lot of community will engage on this one. In the past, we did have the Hounslow Network community. I think we have still existing that one, and we get the almost I think around 500 to 600 community engaged on that.
Vishnu,
one.
do you have a question for Aretha as well?
Yes, yeah. So whether you have connected with them, or I don't know, and how many in a community that's you have in data, and how much they are going to asking you, which is that the question is already repeat. But the first thing is that I would like to know whether how many community that's you've been approached to for this cultural event, because we are diverse community. I want to see everyone be involved in this one. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I respond? Is that
Yes,
okay?
please.
Yeah. Okay. So we have been working through the database that we have of our community groups. I don't know about the Hounslow Network community, so when I go back, I will research that. But we have got a diverse range of organisations that we contact and we engage with through various other teams across the borough. So we've been contacting them. I've also been attending various forums like the Race Equality Forum, the Disability Network in Hounslow, to make sure that we are really hearing the voices of those diverse populations as well. and going into community groups to talk to them. So in terms of numbers, if you're interested in numbers, I would say that we've probably approached and reached about 100. But that doesn't account for the people that might be on the Teams calls that I've been doing as well. So I'm very aware that that's not the end of it. We need to make sure that we're continuing to engage people right through the programme, right in the build-up, but also during the delivery and at the end, because we don't want it to just stop in August. We want to make sure that we have some sort of legacy going forward as well.
That was a dead heat between Kuldeep and Hina, so Hina can go first. Ladies first.
Thank you, Chair. We have quite a lot of community groups on this side of the borough as well. So the only thing I will say is more engagement with the groups. And on this side of the borough, if we can have more awareness about the programme, that will only bring success to the programme. That's it. So if we can do that, that will be, like we have Feltham Community Group, and there are so many groups within the group, so you can approach any of the councillors who can assist you with that.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, we're also quite close with Feltham Arts, and so we do use their contacts as well. But it would be great to hear from groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Councillor Kuldeep Tak.
Thank you, Chair. Is this grant open to all the community cultural groups or specific ones who organize events for a specific purpose, or is it open to all cultural groups?
It's open to all cultural groups.
Okay.
So the threshold, the lower threshold, are for groups that want to do something to actually get their confidence up in applying for grants to the council. And as you know, there's several thriving community grants that they might then go on to apply for. And then there's the larger grant, which we expect people who may be doing more organised events to come forward as well. But yeah, it's open to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kuldeep. Can I ask Aretha, Feltham has a really rich history, but it's not celebrated enough. We're starting to, and hopefully with Hanworth Park House coming online soon, we can really start boosting that. Is there potential here in this summer of culture to boost, Freddie Mercury, Aston Martin, the Highfields, the Fruit, the air parks, a great history in Feltham? That's one question. And secondly, you mentioned some inequalities data that you're using to reach people. Can you just give us a flavour of how you're doing that? What is that data and how effective it could be?
Yeah, okay. So with the first one, absolutely. I'm a heritage girl at heart. So it is about heritage and local history and making sure that that's relevant to the people that live here so that they are contributing to that as well. So yes, there will be opportunities to do that. With regards to the inequality data. So the council has done a huge amount of work, our qualities team has done a huge amount of work to capture inequality data across the borough and the wards that are engaged and aren't. But also there is things like digital exclusion, for example. So we want to make sure, as an example, if we are putting on a programme, we want to make sure that there's a digital online presence, because some really good things have happened over the couple of years with that. But it might be that we focus in real life events in the areas where people wouldn't be able to access the digital data. Does that make sense? The digital activity. So making sure that we're doing that, but also looking at the demographics of our areas and looking where projects will be centred. And with the community grant, we're also considering which areas have had less applicants apply for funding across the council and how we can support that, as well as the communities that are based within those areas.
Thank you very much, Aretha. We have had Feltham Arts doing pieces about Feltham history in recent years, creative people and places. It's wonderful. We should all celebrate it more, read the books and go out there and sell the story. We're not just the rough bit between Hillingdon and Richmond and Kingston. We're actually a wonderful town and a wonderful area, West area, with a history and a culture richer than some of our more well-known friends. So let's all chip into that, yeah? I think we're agreed. Okay, Aretha, thank you so much indeed for coming this evening.
Much. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 5, which is our community safety update. And Permjit will present this along with Elliot. And Elliot has arrived. I did see him come through the door, who is our Director of Communities at London Borough of Hounslow. So please welcome Permjit and Elliot. This is a big issue for us, obviously, in Feltham community safety. We had a bit of a rough summer. Council has worked on certain things, and Hanif will update us on that shortly. But firstly, can I welcome Elliot and Permjit?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Firstly, it's just a thank you for the invitation this evening. We are trying to get round area forums and as many community groups as we can at the moment to really promote the work that's going on in community safety across the piece, really, in terms of the strategic work, but also the operational work. So Permjit's going to really explain to you tonight about, I suppose, a new approach in how we are trying to tackle the issues around community safety. And it's very much trying to go on a journey from an enforcement-based approach, which we've had to have for a number of years, and really trying to move over a period of time, not immediately, to a more engaging and preventative approach to this type of work. We really want to get to the root causes of why people cause antisocial behaviour and crime, rather than just dealing with the issue as it happens, try and go, as we say, upstream and really intervene early, give young people different choices, better opportunities so they don't go down a certain path. However, we do understand that there always has to be an element of enforcement around community safety and antisocial behaviour. So we're not disregarding that. We have developed much stronger links with the police over the past several months. Obviously, new leadership team at the West Area BCU, that they seem to be taking a very, very engaging approach to community policing. Lots of contact between ourselves and the police and the lead member, Councillor Catherine Dunn, and the police. It seems to be forging some really strong links. So this is very much the start of a journey. We do hope that this is the start of regular visits to the community and presence in the community in this area. And we really do want to hear from people about the experiences that they have out in the community, and not just their experiences, but also their ideas. We're really keen to hear that. So I'll hand over to Permjit now.
Thank you, Edia. Hello, everyone. I have a tendency to break high tea, which I've done. Thank you. Sorry, dodgy start. So just wanted to bring to your attention the Safer Community Strategy, which was agreed by Borough Council in March 2020. And the overall outcome of that strategy is working with our communities to keep Hounslow a low crime borough and a safe place to live, work, study and visit. Just want to emphasise that Hounslow is a low crime borough. Our crime levels are lower than the London average. However, we're not complacent. We do understand that some parts of the borough experience higher crime levels, and we know some of our communities are disproportionately affected by crime, and also the fear of crime can affect the quality of lives as well, even if you haven't been directly affected by a crime. So with that in mind and our data and talking to our professionals, we've come up with three priorities within the strategy. So the first one is residents are less affected by serious crime. So we really want to focus on those serious crimes, so those ones that are linked to violence, drug-related crimes as well. We want to be looking at our second priority, which is around young people and adults exposed to and exploited to commit crimes receive help. So a lot of the criminality that we're seeing at the moment is where young people and some vulnerable adults are being exploited into committing crimes because of their vulnerabilities. So we really want to focus on that cohort, and we also want to continue to work with our victims of domestic violence, sexual violence and hate crime and trafficking as well. And then the last priority is residents work together to keep Hounslow safe. So this is a really important new priority for us. We want to be working with all our communities and also with all our residents in co-designing and co-delivering local initiatives in neighbourhoods. So we want to be working with our local communities. So the strategy is a partnership strategy, so it's not a council-led strategy. We are working very closely with our partners, like the police Elliot mentioned, but also other organisations like health, the probation service, and we've got a big focus during the life of the strategy to work with our third sector organisations. We know that they have a better reach into our communities, and our communities are more likely to engage with them rather than statutory services. But the community safety team, which I manage, play a really key role in delivering the strategy. So I'm just going to quickly outline the 3 areas and the 3 teams that I manage. The first one is the domestic and sexual violence team. They work directly with residents who are affected by domestic and sexual violence, including trafficking, and they do that through face-to-face advocacy, group work programme, and they deliver a one-stop shop, which has just recommenced after the lockdown period. And it's just worthwhile pointing out that the service pre-COVID were receiving 46 cases of domestic violence. During the pandemic, the average has been 138, so that's over 300% increase. And June 2021 saw a referral caseload of 170. It's been a real struggle, and the team have struggled, and we've even had to reach out to our community organisations to help us with supporting those victims. And the types of domestic violence that we're seeing now includes economic poverty, so we've got more victims who are experiencing different types of poverty. More victims are also sharing mental health issues as well, so the cases are getting more complex. The second team is mostly working on making sure that the council and its partners deliver its statutory duties. So we have a duty to keep our boroughs safe. They also are responsible for implementing new legislation, like the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, and also leading on our partnership plans. We have a violence and vulnerability action plan, which all local authorities in London have to have one. And the third team is a new team, which is being set up to implement this new area-based approach that Elliot alluded to earlier. And it is a new team. We have editor who joined only a few weeks ago. I'm really excited to have her. She comes with a lot of experience and has worked with the local authority for a long time and knows the borough well. And Vicky, who manages the team, also is new as well, and she comes with a lot of experience. So really excited to have both of them join the team. And then there's 3 other safer community officers who cover the rest of the borough. So they're looking at different patches across the whole of the borough. We have a dedicated worker who is leading on keeping Ivy Bridge Safe Together pilot, which is another preventative pilot. And the workers' responsibilities are to coordinate a range of crime reduction initiatives, working closely with our partners and with our residents. The unique thing about this new team is that their role is to engage with residents. So we really want to hear from residents and our communities about the crimes that are affecting them. So really do urge everyone to reach out to them and speak to, editor and Vicky around the issues that you're experiencing, because we want to work with you in that preventative approach going forward. So we have started a pilot in the west of the borough, and this came about last year, during the latter part of the year. Ward councillors raised concerns around the crime levels and were concerned that enough wasn't happening. So we took that on board and looked at our strategy and thought we could pilot this new area-based preventative approach. So since last year, we have been meeting regularly with all the ward councillors to look at what those issues are, and we recently had a review of that setup, and we're going forward. We've got a new way of working just to streamline some of the activities that we were doing. So our priorities going forward include communication engagement. So one of the key things that we want to really focus on is making sure that we're communicating with our residents and our communities about the work that we're doing and engaging with them. So there's going to be a big focus on that. And then the second is around performance measures. It's fantastic that we're doing all of this work, but how do we know that we're being successful and that we're actually making a difference when it comes to the lives of people affected by crime? So we were looking at some meaningful performance measures, but also we want to hear about some of the good news stories, so we want to celebrate those successes. We also have a MOPAC funded project, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide, and then training awareness. So there is a piece around raising the awareness of some of the criminality that is we're experiencing in Hounslow, not just in Hounslow but across London, so around the exploitation. So often we residents raise concerns around young people dealing drugs, and often we say to them that actually we have to look at whether they're being exploited into dealing those drugs, and often they're at the bottom of a hierarchy where we have real top organised criminal organisations. So we really want to look at how we can raise the profile of those different crimes. And then I'm just going to quickly talk about MOPAC funded projects. So just at the end of last year, we received 68k from the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime for a project for 12 months, which is looking at developing local interventions in a particular part of the borough which has got issues around or there's levels of violence, and we've selected the west of the borough. And this project is being delivered in partnership with No Shame in Running and Ealing and Hounslow CVS. And there's 3 elements to the project. First is implementing that area-based approach and raising the awareness and doing the communication element of our new priorities going forward. And then No Shame in Running is going to be looking at engaging with children and young people. It's really important, and Aretha mentioned it earlier in her work, that we really need to hear the voice of our young people and actually what their experiences are, and also get them to share with us their ideas around how we could address some of the issues in neighbourhoods. We really want to be engaging with our young people. So No Shame in Running is leading on that element. And then the second one is around supporting residents to come together to set up groups that can help with the violence reduction agenda. So, and also looking at increasing volunteering as well as part of the in the West area. So what I'm going to just briefly touch upon now is just a snapshot of our work programme since we started this project. I've just realised I can't actually see the screen because I'm too far away, so bear with me while I squint. So the first one is reducing crime. So what we had before the pilot started was an ad hoc approach to crime issues. And where we are now, we have a dedicated Safer Communities Officer editor who's in place, working very closely with the police to look at coordinated responses to crime issues. Where we want to be next is we want to be engaging more partners in that multi-agency approach. So we want to be encouraging our third sector organisations to join the work that we're doing. And then the Safer Communities Ward Walkabout. So this is something new that's happened. So we really weren't doing those joint walkabouts with the ward councillors and with our local police to really get a sense of what's going on in the different parts of the different wards. So all the ward walkabouts have been completed, but it's not going to be a one-off event. We're going to be continually looking at how we do that going forward, and we're going to carry on working closely with our ward councillors on those issues. So the next thing we want to do is carry out, you said we did an event in partnership with local communities. So this is where the engagement piece really kicks in. We want to be identifying where the issues are and then speaking to those residents saying, okay, what do you think some of the solutions are, and let's work together to reduce those issues. I know that editor is speaking with Places for People with a particular issue that we've got, and they're looking at doing an event, I think it's in the springtime. So we've already got one in the pipeline. And then the next one is housing provider engagement. So one of the things that we heard from our ward councillors was the lack of engagement or ad hoc engagement that we, thank you, that we had with our non-council housing providers, and that includes our private management agencies as well. So it's one of the key areas that the ward councillors have asked us to focus on. So we have started building and strengthening those relationships, and already we've seen some positive actions taken against some of those individuals. Places for People have served a NOSP on a family that were causing some issues, but at the same time making sure that we were providing support so we can help that behaviour immediate stop. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that this is a regular way of working. So we are working towards making sure that we are meeting with them regularly, we're having those conversations, and they're engaged in our preventative approach going forward. I think that's it. Thank you.
I didn't expect that sort of an... I was all ready for
Thank you, Joan.
I was all ready for the coda. That was it. The end. Okay, yes, Kuldeep had his hand up, so Kuldeep, you've got first go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I remember Councillor Foot mentioning issues with the HMOs in last Area Forum meeting as well. HMOs causing issues in neighbourhood areas, and I have a few residents sitting here who have complained, have sent emails to me in last 2 days regarding HMOs popping up in the street in last few months. Multiple HMOs popping up and ex-offenders being housed in those HMOs, which are closer, very close to schools. How that increases safety among the school-going children's and residents in the
Kuldeep, can I just ask, is this a question for Permjit, or do you prefer to hold that for the police chat?
No, it's a question for
Permjit.
Permjit.
Okay, thank you.
So the issue when we're looking at HMOs is and placing ex-offenders in HMOs, there's a fine balance, because we do have a duty to rehouse ex-offenders. We have a legal duty to do that. So it's a balance around finding the right place to place them. But if they are causing problems, then we have to be looking at those issues that they're causing and taking appropriate action, whether that's through a preventative approach or using our enforcement tools. I know that Editor and the police were talking earlier around a particular issue around a HMO, and they are working on it, and we're working with our private housing sector to look at what those particular issues are with that particular HMO. There is a register of HMOs that is available, so you can check to see whether it's a licensed HMO. And if you think it's not licensed, then I would urge you to contact the private sector housing enforcement team, and they will investigate it for you, and they will also look at any issues that are associated around antisocial behaviour and criminality.
Thank you, Kuldeep. Yeah. Richard Foot.
First, it's, as you know, we were very...
And can you then ask a question of Permjit after just adding to that?
Sorry?
Can you then ask a question of Permjit after you've updated us?
Well, I'm just picking up on what's been said about HMOs, that, and I think it's wrong to assume that all HMOs are bad. That is the first thing to say. A lot of HMOs do good work, but they need to be registered and they need to be licensed and controlled. The borough is currently going through a project to introduce HMOs across the entire budget, across the entire budget. That's C3 HMOs. That's the ones that are the up to 5 persons houses, not the larger ones. So they're being looked at licensing. At the moment, the only place that happens is in Hanworth, where they were licensed because of a complete, boom in growth with the C3 HMOs. But it's quite a complex situation, and one that you've got to look at. The situation. Yes, they are useful for housing people that that have nowhere else to go, but they need to be controlled and controlled, the wrong word, observed, I think would be better. Observation, that they're under, really. So I think from that point of view that it's something that can be done. The question I was going to ask is entirely on a different subject altogether. It's housing associations. We have a more or less permanent problem over the years in Hanworth with one particular housing association, RHP, and you know, we've had real difficulty, I think, with officers from RHP that we can't that don't respond, and they are in Hanworth. They represent something like about, it must be certainly at least a third of the social housing in Hanworth is run by RHP. And if we can't get communication from them, that really is difficult. So I don't know whether you have suffered the same difficulties or whether or not you've got, you know, you're having a greater effect.
Thank you, Richard. Permjit, yeah, can you follow up on that? It was obviously Catalyst, A2 Dominion. Yeah. They're all in the same boat.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I know that Editor has already reached out to Richmond Housing Partnership, and she's connected with the officer there. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do is try and build those relationships between the ward councillors and those housing associations. So Editor is going to be on their case in the nicest possible way.
We have the scars on our back to prove it, I must say. A2 Dominion. Yes, can I ask Elliot to come in on that?
Yep. So I think in answer to one part of your question, Councillor Foote, we haven't always had any more success than clearly you're expressing. It's been, you know, I used to work, before I work in communities, I was working in housing, and from just never mind serious crime and ASB, but general day-to-day housing management, it was always difficult to bring the housing associations to the table. I've had, you know, several experiences with most of the housing associations in the borough, and it's quite consistent, I suppose, the frustration. But I would like to say, as well as the operational activity that Permjit and the team are doing and having some inroads in, this is actually being tackled at a very high level within the council. Leader of the council today, I know, met, I think, the chief executive of Catalyst Housing Association, along with Mandy Skinner and Peter Matthew, about ongoing frustrations around tenancy management and antisocial behaviour. So they went straight to the top of the organisation, and I had a bit of feedback from that meeting, and I think there's going to be perhaps some attempts to develop better partnership working with the council acting almost as the facilitator for that, for housing associations in the borough. So I think it is an issue that's recognised and understood that has to be better. So I think it's a real priority for the work that Permjit and the team are doing on the ground, but it's clearly a priority from a strategic level from the council as well.
I have to say, any of us who represent central wards know A2 Dominion very well, and people like this. You know, they're on my friends and family. I mean, it's constant. You know, I can see friends there. There's Anne and Ed. You know, we always have issues, don't we, with town centre flats. Candy Satterton.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I really welcome all of this work, and especially sort of a real sort of shift towards the preventative work. I wondered how much has already been done, or is there plans to do sort of some engagement and sort of participation work with children who are sort of at risk and on the edge, just to really kind of get from them how they want to be kept safe and what are their fears, and also with parents. I talk about it a lot, but I work with children who offend, and you know, recently I saw one on the news. Like I'm not allowed to sort of go digging to find out like about their offences, but it popped up on the news, and there was lots of TikTok sort of images of these boys who had gone on to commit murder, but they had like lots of big knives, and they were just in their bedroom, and I was just thinking how their parents probably know that they're in their bedrooms with these knives, and maybe just don't know where to sort of put their hand up and say, I need help, my child is carrying knives, because they're probably very fearful, and around social care, etc. So I just wondered, like, what are our plans around supporting parents, making parents feel safe enough to seek help, etc.
I'm just going to jump in before Permjit gives you more detail, only because of an event I've just come from that I think others in the room have just been at, in the event hosted by Seema Malhotra this evening. There was a presentation by the organisation Permjit explained, No Shame in Running, that we are working closely with in this area of the borough. And the approach they take is that, you know, lots of interventions that are tackled at young people are open to all. But their work is very much targeted at those who've either been excluded or at risk of exclusion. So, you know, they have started their journey on the wrong path, so to speak. And without going into too much detail, it was really inspiring what we heard tonight in that the results they have. I think they'd been explaining that it's actually a model that's come over from Holland, but even in the small sort of start in the UK, they have success of around 80% of those engaged in their programmes don't re-offend and don't face any more problems and do re-engage back with school. So, like everything, it's about resources. You know, we would like to plough more resources into that type of approach rather than enforcement. You know, hence why I was saying we're trying to move to that preventative model. But that's the type of thing that we need to concentrate, I think. It's really good to have programmes and interventions that are open to everyone, and there's always going to be a place for that. Things like Brentford Football Club and all the activities they do on our estates and in our neighbourhoods. But we do need to also have some targeted interventions from those children and those young people who are already taking perhaps the wrong decisions or going on the wrong path.
Thanks, Elliot. So we're working very closely with our colleagues in children's services. So one of the things that we have identified is the feedback we've got from parents whose young children have been exploited into committing serious crimes. And they have shared with us that they felt quite isolated. They didn't know where to turn to in terms of support. And there's a group that's been set up called Action Isleworth Mothers with Astrid, who's really inspired the work around how we engage with our parents, and we are looking at setting up a parent carer network, and we've got some money from MOPAC, so we're just finalising those details. We really want parents who've experienced those issues then to be available for other parents who are going through a similar issue. So that's going to be coming online very shortly. There's lots of work that we're doing around prevention with schools. The Hands Education Partnership, they're running a project, again funded by MOPAC, around reducing exclusions, because we often know those children who are excluded will be exploited. We want to keep them in school, but we have to make sure it's safe for them and the rest of the school. We're doing a work around transitions. We often know those children that are vulnerable, that don't meet a statutory threshold, that go into high school, often get lost and in the high school environment. So there's some work happening with them, that cohort as well, so because then they end up being excluded. So there's quite a bit happening around that area of work, but what I'm taking away from this is we really need to be selling that a bit more and sharing those areas of work with everyone a bit more so people can tap into them.
Thank you, Pernji. Any other comments from the floor? Councillor Hanif Khan.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation. I thought it was really good, but what I didn't see is the social value in more detail. If you can just tell us a little bit more about that, that would be absolutely awesome. And also, a lot of what has already been described is this is what we already know. We've known a lot of this, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This is all the same stuff again and again. And obviously, the resources have, over the last 2 decades, the resources have been cut, and we know that. And every time we look at trying to implement a new system, you find the resources are being cut, reduced, and it's really difficult. Hence why I feel that a lot of what we're hearing today is the same thing kind of wrapped up differently. Okay. Not that I don't say you're doing the work, because I am one of the champions of the work that you're doing, as you are aware of anyway. But what I need to hear, or when you come back next time, is the actual examples of the social value that you've given, some case studies. I know the work that Garvin does, No Shame in Running, and many of us know the other groups well. But actually, when we talk about children who you've managed to make an intervention, there are still few, there's not many. The point that Councillor Atherton made about the parents...
Hanif, could you get a question in there?
The question's already been said at my first sentence, so I'll just enjoy myself. And so actually, I'll hold it there. But the key thing is, and I always ask this question of you, and you know, this is nothing new I'm asking you, okay, because I do respect the work you do. I need to see the social value. I understand everything you're doing. I get the KPIs. I've heard it so many times already. today, I know we're doing a pilot here, but you know this. You already know this. You've known this for decades. We know the cuts are there. What's different? I feel it's different, and I think people listening to you feel it's different, but I really need, either if not now, when you come back next time, we want to know statistics, we want to know the interventions, if that's possible. Thanks.
Elliot, can you briefly deal with that? Thanks.
I can. Firstly, so around the social value, we are, and I don't want to get too sort of technical about this, but in much of the work the council broadly is doing at the moment, it's trying to take a preventative approach. We are trying to move away in all of our services from dealing with issues at the critical point, and we are trying to invest upstream. And we've been working, and this goes for community safety, community solutions, some of the housing work that we're doing. Actually, we are working with our colleagues in finance to say, we're investing in all this. This is money being invested in. This Safer Communities team is actually an increase in resources. You're right, Councillor Khan. It's almost back to the old way we used to work that was cut, and then we've gone back and we've reinvested money into a preventative approach. But the difference, I think, this time will be that we are being sort of, and it's by councillors, really, in the main, by saying, prove the investment works. So we want to know actually both the benefits to our community, those tangible benefits, and then also the benefit to the public purse. Is it saving us money in the long and medium term? And we've sort of developed a methodology and evaluation framework with our colleagues in finance that is now being able to churn out the proof. So a project as an example, a very brief example, Chair, that Permjit's team work on is children affected by domestic abuse, CARDA. So this is something the council has chosen to invest in because actually we've been able to demonstrate over the past 2 to 3 years it saves not just the council money but the wider public sector money in terms of if we have the interaction with families who are affected by domestic abuse early, it stops future referrals to other expensive statutory services. So we've got a model there that actually says if we invest X amount in CARDA, it actually saves us this amount of money over the next several years. And that's, I suppose, the framework that we're trying to use, Councillor Khan, in terms of much of the work that we're doing now. If we invest in this approach, actually, over a period of time, it's not immediate. There's a patience needed with this type of approach. These are the benefits, both to the community on sometimes an immediate basis, but to the finances further down the line. So I would say that we are getting to the point where we will be able to put stuff up on a screen in front of you that says, it works.
Chair, just one quick follow-up, but
no answer required.
No answer required. I get the money aspect because it's very clear that the investment CARDA saves us money in the long run. But I just want to know more than the money, the figures. I want to know if I gave you £1, I'm getting £3 back, and that difference of social value is what I really need to, but not now. That's really what we want to see so we can measure it. It's hard to measure, but there is the feel factor of that is what we need to see.
Okay, thank you, Hanif. I think we're all agreed that this initiative is better than the ones before, but it is a series, a programme we've seen before in different ways. So I think people want to see some real flesh on the bones, how we're communicating, consulting with residents, with businesses, with young people, what that actually looks like. Garvin Snell does wonderful work with his organisation, but what this actually would look like. So bring some of that back, because that consultation has got to happen. We've got to move it on. Okay, thank you very much indeed. No further questions for Permjit and Elliot. Thank you very much for your participation this evening. And moving on to number 6, very briefly, and dovetailing with that, it just happened to dovetail with this strategy. We, the West Area members, were not happy in the summer with a lot of the problems in our town, and so 1 or 2 high-profile incidents, and so we did approach the council. We did get an initiative going, and it's bearing fruit. We have extra patrols in the town centre, supported by other units, including high vis, 3 to 8 p.m. And at the weekend, there have been some significant arrests following the problems by the bus stop and burglaries. So we are seeing this extra action paying back. But can I just ask Hanif briefly to give us a little bit of an overview on what we've done and what's happening. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Chair. So I was possibly a little bit hard on my officers because I actually know the work they do. But one of the things that happened over last summer, if you remember, there was the heightened of the helicopter, the stabbing, and all of that happened over summer. So many of the ward councillors were very worried because residents like you were saying, what has happened here? I mean, a lot of it was blown out of proportion, we know that, but there was real issue. So when we got together, we then started championing how can we solve this? This is a real issue. So the pilot was started, which was the Safer Communities for Bedfont, Hanworth and Hanworth Park and Feltham alone, mainly geared to the town centre, then expanded. So cut a long story short, the pilot that both our officers, Elliot and Permjit, were talking about, was then invested into this West Area part of the borough. So we are, one, privileged to be able to receive that money and officers' time to be able to invest in it. And we've had officers like our Sophie community officers, editor, who have come on board and really run with this and now are tackling the real issues right down at a granular level. And that is what we wanted here in the borough. And these are examples working with Places for People, RHP, Peabody, A2 Dominion, and solving these problems with our young children who are caught up in antisocial behaviour and crime that can then be investigated and brought back to the housing association, that then where they live, where they need the support, where the parents need the support to be able to stop it from happening. These are the real issues that we're seeing and what we've done. I mean, my chair said to be really short, but I just really wanted to give you that example. And very quickly, as you know, recently, Inspector Justin Petty, he put in very quickly, because the system's in place now, is Section 60, which meant that the uniformed officers could go and search in a certain area for children who were carrying weapons. And all that happens really quickly. And when that took place, we were informed. So when our residents contacted the councillors, they said, yeah, we're fully aware of what's going on. There's a reason why it took place. The information came from the police. They've acted upon it. And this is all related to making our communities feel safer. And I can assure you that us ward councillors are making this as a priority. Because when we spoke about that social value, I know you can't put an exact figure on it. What we want to do is our children, our parents, our elderly, when they walk down the street, they want to feel, yeah, I'm okay here. I'm going to go down Felton Pond and enjoy it, and I know I'm not going to be harassed. I feel good about myself. That value is what we have now started, and it's being produced. So I'll just end there. Happy to talk about more and take questions. But Chair, I think is that what you wanted, Jeff? Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Hanif. And just building on that, this is very positive. I was written to the other day by A2 Dominion, who I've been, as I said, in constant contact with for a number of years. They want to launch yet another initiative here around Feltham Town Centre to deal with some of these problems. And I think it's all communication. When you have the police, the housing associations, council officers, councillors, and where we're the guests tonight here, the centre management, there never used to be any communication. There is now. They're all coming to the same meetings. We're getting progress. I think that's good. And I think it underlines what you're saying, Hanif. Okay, thank you, Hanif. I'm going to move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the police update, and I believe Dan is here. There he is. I saw him creep in. Dan Wood.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair, for the invite. I just wanted to provide a quick update in terms of what activity we're doing. Cheers, thank you. And then over to questions for yourselves. I'm Sergeant Dan Wood, so I'm responsible for Felton West, Hanworth Park and Hanworth. The other sergeant is Sergeant John Williams. We've got PC Jacob Davis here, who's the dedicated ward officer for Feltham North. So just to provide a quick update in terms of the crime snapshot for the whole of the Feltham sector, so that includes all of the wards. I've started off with these 4 offences, and it can be flexible to councillors and local residents as to what you want presented. But, but I thought it would be a good start. These are our main offences. This is what flags up at ward panel meetings, and they involve violence, which is our #1 priority in the sector. So 2021 was a difficult year because we had the lockdowns, and so it's very difficult to draw comparisons on that. However, we're going in the right direction in terms of burglary. We've seen a reduction from December from 38 to 21. Robbery remains the same. 5 in January were recorded. Drug offences are higher than last year, but they are a sign of our proactivity. We don't record drug offences through hearsay. Drug offences are generated as a result of the work that we're doing through stop and search or through Misuse Drugs Act warrants. And theft from motor vehicle offences are gradually going down from 53 in November last year to 22 this year. So just some updates in terms of all the wards. So as I mentioned last time, all the wards are now staffed with at least 2 dedicated ward officers. And as we go through the slides, you'll get the names of them officers. So if you do want to make direct contact with them, you know their names. There's 2 full-time operational sergeants now in post. So Sergeant Dave Vokes has now moved off, and he's been replaced by Sergeant John Williams. Just to provide a bit of an update in terms of town centre teams, which you may have seen in the media, we've just recently launched the one in Hounslow Town Centre. At present, though, Feltham is not considered as part of that rollout. Unfortunately, we want it as much as everyone, yeah. So moving on to the next part. So I wanted to go through each of the wards, which at the last area forum, which the councillors agreed it would be good to get an update on each one. So for Felton West, as you can see the ward on the side there, Cliff Kendrick, he's a new officer. He's with Hannah Goldie and PCSO Mo Alias. So give you a bit of an update. There's a business meeting scheduled for the 14th of March 2022. So myself and the local ward officers will be meeting with the local business community, provide crime prevention advice, see what our priorities are, see where they're seeing the biggest issues, and to work together with them. That's the first one we've held, but we've tried to prioritise it since the summer. Hannah and Cliff have continued to work with the LBH and the Housing Authority around ASB from HMOs. We definitely do rely on intelligence and information passed from residents. So if you do have any information related to that, please record it and please do let us know, and same with the local authority. An e-scooter operation's been held in Felton West alongside Feltham North. That included engagement, education, enforcement around the use of e-scooters. We've had weekly, day in, day out since the last area forum, extended patrols, high-vis patrols, dispersal notices issued and granted where it's been approved, and we've remained visible on the streets of Feltham High Street, in my opinion. Redford Close come up as an area which had 2 robbery offences. We've got a grip of that quickly. We've used a design out crime officer straight away, and they've worked with the local authority CCTV spot and installed a Nomad camera. So that's been installed for a period of time to try and monitor criminality or general intelligence. And that's going to be subject to a long-term review in terms of the layout of the land by the design out crime officer. So upcoming, we've got development of information around drug supply, and we've got the implementation of the POPs review, which is the problem-orientated policing review, which Jacob is going to provide an update later on in the presentation. So moving to Feltham North, which Jacob's ward. Closure orders have been obtained in relation to an address linked to drug supply and ASB. We were receiving reports of littering, faeces in the doorway, assault on neighbours. The block is generally for elderly, vulnerable adults, but we've executed a Misuse of Drugs Act warrant, and now we've obtained a closure order in relation to that. Robbery, again, we're going to discuss it over leaf because it was a brilliant piece of work which has seen a reduction in robberies, and it has seen a reduction in ASB on the high street. Dangerous dogs, we've done a lot of work around that, and Mike Hawksford has done seized the American Akita, history of attacking members of the public. And we've got the arrest of high harm offenders on the high street related to GBH offences. Last week we also see £6,000 worth of Class A in the area of Feltham North. Upcoming, we're going to continue to work with partners, TSG, licensing, local authority and community referrals to solve issues on the ward We're going to reconnect with the community post-pandemic, i.e. primary schools, and we're going to continue on our focus on our hotspot areas. Your DWIs haven't changed there, just as Sergeant John Williams has. For Bedfont Ward, again, HMOs remain the priority, and we will continue to work with partners and landlords to target addresses where neighbouring residents report the ASB. Bedfont have seen 2 cannabis factories closed in Warfield Road and Benedict Drive. And Sally and Andy continue to work with test purchasers, utilising local cadets to monitor the selling of goods to those underage. Last time we done it, 2 shops failed that, and they were subsequently issued with advice. Listening to the community, we continue to want to listen to you and your reports that you give in, your intelligence, and we do respond to it. We will action it, as it can see with drug supply from business premises. Finally, we're going to work with other strands within the police to target our prolific offenders for theft offences, burglary and vehicle crime. And then coming up, we've mobilised volunteers and partners to distribute burglary prevention packs, numbering 1,000 so far. Hanworth Park Ward, they continue to be really busy. Weapon sweeps of Leitrim Park, Slattery Road, White Avenue, them sort of areas. High harm offenders have been arrested. They were linked to a GBH near to New Chapel Square, and they've also been involved in the arrest of a male wanted for a number of sexual offences. We've in the team, the local ward team, have installed the Nomad cameras, which I mentioned earlier, on Feltham High Street near to New Chapel Square, and upcoming work for them. And the upcoming work with them is they're going to work with the LBH and local residents around Hanworth Park to design out some of the ongoing reported issues around motorbikes, mopeds being ridden across the green space, making it accessible for everyone. Hanworth Ward, finally, could they continue to patrol and get a grip of youth violence and ASB in relation to Butts Farm? They've secured 2 closure orders at addresses linked to ASB. They continued their road traffic operations around uninsured vehicles and work with partners to seize puppies in low welfare trade. Crane Park, again, it's a subject to target and extended patrols, focusing on stop and search around drug activity and e-scooter operations. And then finally, ASB in Swan Road, they're supporting the vulnerable addresses that we've got there, potentially those being cocooned, and ongoing weapon suites, partial closure orders obtained from the addresses heavily linked to ASB. So I just wanted to highlight some of the 2 specific projects which have taken place in the last month, and Jacob is going to give you an update on each of those now.
Yeah, so Councillor Hanif alluded to it earlier, but Feltham High Street was identified as one of West Area's priority violence locations as a result of the stabbings, the helicopter, the incidents that were taking place. As a result of that, the Home Office gave us a decent chunk of funding to combat the problem using evidence-based policing. We went out into the community kind of trying to seek out a bit of feedback, seeing what people wanted, and from speaking to charities, speaking to the individuals involved in that violence, speaking to the parents of those individuals, it seemed that one of the main issues was that there was nowhere in Felton where youths could kind of safely meet and interact. And as a result, we're working with No Shame in Running, which is a project that's already been mentioned this evening. But to give you a brief overview, they essentially provide a safe space for young adults who have been identified as being vulnerable to being drawn into that youth violence. We're funding a few initiatives that No Shame in Running are taking charge of. Firstly, a weekly walk-in youth club at Berberis House, which has been running for 2 weeks so far, seeing about 30 kids each week, which is quite promising. 9 weeks of mentoring for kids and their families, and also a number of gym memberships for children to help divert them from crime and antisocial behaviour. But perhaps most importantly, No Shame in Running are running a project called Active Community Engagement, or ACE, which involves delivering family interventions on Monday evenings, which are held at Hanworth Community Centre. Families take part in fitness sessions and workshops which raise awareness on the risks that young people are facing, workshops on grooming, exploitation, knife crime, and just staying safe. The feedback from it so far has been really positive, and we're actually attending next week in a plainclothes capacity, because that was some of the feedback that we got, that would be good to see police visible at these kind of events and help us build trust within the community. Moving on to Felton Park and the robbery reduction, you probably saw in the statistics earlier that in November, December, there was a significant rise in robberies. These were primarily taking place in Felton Park, and going off the descriptions of the suspects on the crime reports, we quickly established that it was the same group of people that were carrying them out. But unfortunately, at the time, victims weren't supportive, there was no CCTV evidence, and so we were struggling to move forward with actually arresting these individuals and bringing them to justice. So employed a variety of tactics to kind of disrupt their offending, high visibility patrols, stop and searches, bit of plain clothes work. And finally, we had a bit of a breakthrough, managed to arrest 3 prolific offenders for attempted robbery. Once we got them into custody, we were able to make links. Searches of their address were carried out where other items were found from previous robberies, and one of them's been charged, 2 of them are appearing at court next month. But that's really positive because the robberies have decreased since that arrest. We've also just had 3 temporary cameras installed in Felton Park. You might have seen them about. There's one on Helen Avenue, one on Hounslow Road, and one covering the Assembly Halls, which is the location where a lot of the robberies were taking place. And it's quite difficult to quantify how successful they've been, but the initial feedback that we've had from the community has again been quite positive, and it's reflected in the rates of robberies. So yeah, those are 2 projects that we worked on recently.
Yeah, Dan Wood.
Sorry, Chair. It's just worth mentioning that a lot of those victims of robbery offences were young people who were trying to use that park legitimately. And it's just not, it's a nice story to say that we've managed to allow that park to be used again rather than being targeted by these 3 individuals.
Thank you, Dan. I think the point, sorry, is it Cliff? No. Jacob made, considering that was high profile, I think that must be connected to the initiatives that we pushed and the work that you did, with the extra money, the extra patrols, to actually bring those 3 young people to justice, but also to bring them to somewhere where they can actually make a better future too, because without that it can't work. So we're very grateful for that. Can I very briefly ask, is there any questions that you'd like to ask? Suddenly all the hands go up. Richard Foote.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It did occur to me, hearing the comments about the arrests or the activities around licensable goods that were being sold to underage children. Now, I'm chairman of licensing, and I'm very conscious of the fact that I often see things happening at local police level, but it's not being picked up by the licensing police officer. So it never gets to the licensing committee where we can actually take action to take licenses away from people who are selling to underage. So I really want to, make that message there that, please, we need you working with, I think they've just changed the licensing officer just very recently, so I don't know who the new one is. But, if we could get sort of more contact where you get something like this, where it needs to be fed through, that can come up through the licensing committee, and then if necessary, if it's deemed right, we can take their licence away, and they won't be selling the goods.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. We'll link in with Danny Wood, who's the new licensing officer.
Ragwinder Sidhu.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick update. Is there any, in Bedfont, car thefts with the catalyst converters there's a big issue there. Is there any way we can have some proactive in that we can't stop? But is there any way we can put the checks that we can reduce that sort of theft?
Councillor, I know it's a massive issue and it's something we're trying to explore new technology to prevent. Andy, Dan and Sally are changing their shifts to later starts because a lot of these offences are committed in the early hours of the morning. There are some exceptions, but the majority are in the early hours of the morning. And Andy and Dan are changing their shifts to accommodate that with some plain clothes work. But it's worth, I think Heston West, are doing an initiative in the next month or so. So we'll be looking at their results, their tactics they've used and trying to adopt similar ones in Bedfont and all the wards as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Bishnu Gurung.
Thank you, Chair.
I just one question is, what is that? Is the domestic boiling? You haven't come up for this time, so can you update that one? And also on the Hanworth Park ward, especially that's my ward, and Hanif Khan, Forest Road, is DPD is permanently parking there. So it's a parking issue and a lot of serious crime going around there. So how often do you patrol there, and do you have any notice for them? I think I would like you to work together with you and the agreed guy. Yeah? Please, yeah, thank you.
Councillor, with regards to the parking, I personally wasn't aware of that, but I'll make sure that gets back to the team, and we'll do some more proactive stuff around that. We'll work with the local authority as well if we do see any dangerously parked vans. In terms of Hanworth Park, behind where the DPD, I can assure you that is patrolled every time there's PC in from our ward, and we know the issues around drug supply. We know we are doing proactive work, and we are investigating intelligence that comes through. It is definitely on our radar, and it is patrolled daily.
Kuldeep Tak.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the efforts that police has been taking to prevent the crimes. My question is specific to Feltham North, the Donkey Woods and the Hounslow Heath area. There is constant issue, well, usually in the summer, of youngsters going with their mopeds, motorcycles and quad bikes and racing in there. I'm aware that every time an incident is reported, police does come there and takes action. But is there something that can be done to prevent that from happening? It shouldn't be like the youngsters are going and racing there and then residents reporting it, then an action is taken. Can there something that can be done to prevent this from happening? And I've often seen in the night time, don't know who does that, but some people going and setting off fireworks in that area. We can see those blitz, and I've heard complaints from residents saying their pets feeling distress from that, setting off fireworks around 2 a.m., 1 a.m., in particularly that woods area. So can there be something done about that?
So I'm the local ward officer for Feltham North. Weather permitting, we patrol Donkey Woods every single day. We're normally on our bike, so when it's really raining, it's so muddy that you can't get down there. But we've had quite a lot of success in there relating to drug offences. On the motorbike front, it's a difficult one because every time some kind of structure is put in place to stop the bikes going through, they immediately destroy it. All I can say is that we go there pretty much every shift. We disrupt offenders through giving them Section 59 warnings. If we catch them riding it with no insurance, we will seize it. And we've done that in the past, literally taking these scramblers off people's hands because they're not insured to ride it. They're often driving not in accordance with the licence. They fail to stop. They're committing various road traffic offences. So where possible, we do seize it. We'll be proactive going forward, particularly in the summer months, because I know that it's more of a problem then. But all we can say is that if residents do see it happening, if they call it in, a unit will get down and try and disrupt it as and when they can.
Thank you. Yeah, Joan next to me has a couple of questions from Lynn Dalgleish, which she sent in by email, which she's going to share with us now for Dan to respond to. Thank you.
The first one, Chair, is could residents have more information on community triggers, also known as ASB case reviews? She's suggesting that they've been effectively used in other areas, such as Surrey Police, and asks for a bit more information to be circulated on this. And can you respond to that one? Thank you, Dan.
Yep, so thanks for the question. We are aware, obviously, of community trigger reviews. They form part of the ASB response. Sorry, I can see your hand up.
Permjeet has come in to add some valuable information. Permjeet.
So the community trigger is a tool that any community can use, a resident or professional, where a individual thinks that their ASB case hasn't been effectively dealt with, and it has to be 3 incidents over a period of 6 months. And within Hounslow, we've had 5 community triggers. We want to be encouraging more to be using it, but what we want to do is get to a point where our communities don't need to use it, because we're effectively working before it gets to that trigger point. The information is on the council website. I know that Vicky is dealing with a community trigger at the moment, so they do come in, and it's the community safety team that deal with them.
Thank you, Permji. Dan? Oh, sorry, Joan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And as quite rightly Permji said, it's on the website, and I will point Mrs Dalgleish into the direction of the actual thing. There's only one other question, and I don't know whether it's either Dan, it won't necessarily be your team, Permji, you're saying. The rules and regulations on LBH public venues are in place to protect residents and road users from disruption in the local area. It's about parking and enforcement, and there is a formal response that has been sent in regards to that. And I know Elliot's actually been, and Permji had worked in terms of a complaint that came in around parking. I think one of the things from a local authority's perspective is to say that we don't differentiate from any of our residents. If you ring and you lodge a complaint, we will address it constantly, 100%. So just to be very clear, to say to the members of the Neighbourhood Watch Coordinators for Cumbria Court Parkway, TW14, all reported incidents are investigated, and we do thoroughly look into any complaints about poor community cohesion. They just need to carry on making those complaints, and we will continue to address them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joan. And lastly, Candice Atherton.
Thank you very much. Just 2 quick questions. I noticed that you said that with the shops that are serving to the underage that they got advice, and so I just wondered what happens next if they were caught doing that again. Is it more punitive? My husband just got a parking ticket this week for parking where he shouldn't have parked, and he's not going to park there again because it's costing him £60. So I just think we need to be a little bit more strong. I appreciate that some shopkeepers might feel like some pressure or feel quite harassed by people asking for things. But yeah, I'd just like to know what happens next if they were caught again. Then what we need to make sure that we hit them where it hurts. We need to protect our vulnerable children. And then the other question was just to Jacob, if whether you'd be able to share the evidence about the lack of youth settings for children, young people in Feltham. There's some children who are involved in the community locally, and they're trying to sort of build a case to say there is a demand, there is a need. So it'd be really useful for them to get that evidence that you shared. That's it. Thanks.
Just on that point, I spoke to, I think her name is May Lim, so apologies if I'm butchering the pronunciation of her name, but she works for the Reach Academy, which is actually based in the centre, and they did a listening campaign with parents, with young kids. There was a really vulnerable, really useful map that they gave me showing where people had negative experiences in Feltham, and it was basically Feltham High Street and Feltham Park. So potentially link in with her.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually a group that's linked to the Reach Academy Hub, so that's great. I can just point them in her direction. Thanks.
Okay, guys. That's it. Thank you very much indeed for your report. A lot of positive things and things moving in the right direction there, so thank you. We're moving on to the open forum. Lynn Dalgleish's questions were for the police, so they've been passed there. So we don't have a microphone if anyone has a question, I don't believe. Is that right, gentlemen? So you're going to have to project your voice as if you're in the National Theatre. Yes, I can see Anne is ready to give us... Yeah, you can use the microphone that sort of Hanif is playing with there. No. Okay, you have to be on the thing. Does anyone have a question in this evening's open forum?
Anne is new to the borough.
Would you like to just come onto the microphone, Anne? Oh, careful.
And fairly elderly.
You're more than welcome.
Ed and I are both new to the borough. We came here 3 months before the lockdown, in which we spent that 3 months sorting out our accommodation. And so a lot of the time we have been enclosed, not got around the borough as we would have liked. We know Alan because Alan was our befriender from Age UK, we were so impressed with him that we became befrienders ourselves with Age UK, which we've done now for about a year. But what I really wanted to say was that we are so impressed with your borough. I know you get a lot of complaints, every borough does, I'm sure, and perhaps very few pats on the back. Well, I'm here to give you a pat on the back because I think you're a wonderful borough. We've had nothing but kindness and friendliness and help since we've been here. So thank you for that. It's a learning experience for us tonight, and we've learnt a lot. So as I say, a heartfelt thank you, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anne, can you come back next time as well, and sort of just for those that aren't watching tonight? No, it's a pleasure. I know Anne and Ed. They're in Felton West Ward, just round the corner. A lovely couple, and do so much for the community. And as you said, you returned what you'd been given, and it's a pleasure. It's what we're here for. And I only joined Age UK to help out. I know Comel's done it in the past. She's had contact with some of the same people, some of the elderly people that I've been speaking to up at Shaw House and things, Owen House, sorry. So that's lovely. A gentleman in the green top, yes. Would you like to come to the microphone, sir? Could we have your name, sir, and where you're from?
Sorry. No, I'm fine.
It's okay.
I prefer to stand, please. My name is Ian Brown. I live locally, and I'd like to know what you're going to do about renegade HMOs. We had 2 HMOs with, I think, plans to open more in our street. We inquired, there was rumoured that there would be housing offenders. We were told definitely by an email by the council there will not be offenders. Since they've opened, we've had drug addicts moving, we've had drug dealing, we've had drug paraphernalia dumped in the street, we've had alcoholics from the one opposite bang on every door in the street begging for money. It's opposite the Rivers Academy. We've got the Southfield Primary School around the corner, and I wonder where it's going to end. Now, I'd like to say, before I finish, I was practically brought up and born in here, and hearing what you're saying now is what I heard in the 70s. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. And I can tell you the root cause. The root cause is the people who are causing the problem are not from Feltham. They're coming from outside through social cleansing from Wandsworth, Westminster and other boroughs. And they come in, they've got no sense of community, and they attack the local people. And that's what I've got to say.
Okay, and thank you for your comments. I think you're referring to Tatchbrook Road in some of that. Historically, there is much to what you say, but in regard to HMOs and things like that, I think the police were talking earlier about dealing with some of these issues, and it's good that we're moving in a positive direction like that. But I would like to ask Richard Foote just to say a few things on that. I think he's raised his hand.
Yeah, on HMOs, it's a long road, and I know because I had to sit on that road in Hanworth for nearly a year in order to get the HMOs, what we call C3 HMOs. These are the smaller HMOs that have between 4, 5, 6 people living in flats which are not a lot larger than a normal toilet. So, I mean, they're terrible places. Unfortunately, they were allowed by government to be allowed to spring up without planning permission. We managed to get that reversed in Hanworth, and now they can't open them without planning permission. And guess what? They haven't opened them at all. You know, once we stopped them being able to open them without permission, they're not. We haven't had any small ones. There are the larger HMOs, which are licensed ones that do need planning permission, and that's a slightly different problem. But my guess is that we're talking about what I call the C3, the small HMOs. We are now, I think, 3/4 of the way through the process of getting the whole of the borough brought in the same as Hanworth. so that these small HMOs will not be allowed to be created without planning permission. And if they go through planning permission, then obviously they're going to be examined. I don't know, Dana Lee, I don't know whether you can add anything on that, being as I think we've spoken a lot about the subject, as you know.
Yeah, I might ask Dana Lee to speak privately to Ian afterwards. Is that okay, Ian? Because Dana Lee's got some info.
Yeah, Dana Lee is one of the officers that's been dealing a lot with it, and I know I've been a pain to her, so I know she's had to suffer me quite a bit.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Any more questions from the floor? No more questions. Oh, sorry, Anna's got a question.
Well, it's not a question really. Apropos of this, I just heard on the radio.
Can you use the microphone, Anne? Can you come to the table where the mic is?
I just heard on the radio in this last couple of days that the government have decreed that empty premises caused by places being closed down may be turned into housing without planning permission. And there was one town who saw the obvious and said, well, we don't really want this because there will be no regulations of what kind of flats and accommodation there will be. I couldn't understand why the government would do that.
Well, that is the HMO C3. That is what they've done, and it's been there for a long time.
Who's saying that?
Sorry, it's me.
I think it's business. It's a new change as well. It's a business.
Yeah. Can I just ask, Richard? Can you respond to Anne just directly, because I know you've got a lot of info on this.
Yeah, that's primarily using the C3 HMO. If we get the legislation through that we're trying to get through at the moment, which I said is 3/4 of the way through, I think it's only a couple of months off, isn't it, Dana Lee?
Been agreed at.
Yeah. So
Article
I mean,
4.
once that happens, then they can't do that without planning permission in Hounslow. Oh no, I know. Because nationally they can do it in areas where the local authority has not taken out action to stop it. And in Hounslow, we have taken the action to stop it, which we did in Hanworth, and we're now extending that to the entire borough.
I don't know if you're aware, but the office block which was turned next door to New Chapel Square, which was...
We can't hear you, Anne, because of the...
So
I don't know if you were aware, but the office block next door to New Chapel Square, which was turned into flats, we had a lot of this bother, and they were people from North London Council sending down their ex-prisoners and so on. And for a while there, we had some nasty scenes. We did complain, and we got the police clued up.
Was that done without planning permission?
I don't know.
I don't think
considering
so.
That
No, it was a Home Office. I think it was a Home Office thing.
Considering that those
that's a big block.
Those apartments were very expensive, and the police told me that they asked them how they can afford it, and they just laughed and they said, "Oh well, they're being given to us for like £400 a week, a month." Or something, and they've been cleared out. I did find out who. Well, I did know who they belonged to.
And is there another point to your question?
But I was
it's an
astonished
observation.
to hear this.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
But we have local variations that we're doing, and we're also aiming to bring in full Article 4.
Can I just tell you something very quickly?
Very briefly, Anne, please.
Tomorrow night there is a history lecture being given on the Longford River at Normansfield. This is being put on by the Friends of Bushy Park. So if anybody wanted to go and hear that, that's where it is.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was that last point. Feltham History Group is superb. Thank you.
It's not them, it's Bushy Park.
Yes, I know. Yeah, but I'm saying it sort of links in with that. They're excellent too. Okay, so we've got item 9 on the agenda now. Oh, sorry, and we've got Hanif Khan has his hand up.
Chair, just a very, very quick point from the gentleman who spoke earlier. Some of what he described, I think we should just take it up as casework from your ward councillors, because if it doesn't get logged into the system, it could be a reoccurring thing. if you don't add it to the system, then officers can't take action. So I would just recommend that. Who is your ward councillor?
It's
Right,
Culdeep
so, yeah,
and...
right, fine. So I've been told it's been logged,
Come
which is good. So that's the correct way to handle these things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that point. There's a lady in a white
Can I
coat.
say something?
Sorry, can you just hold on, please? Councillor Tack.
I'm already in touch with Ian on that, and thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Could you give your name, please?
My name is Nimi. We have seen many high-rise buildings, and there are huge concerns around the infrastructure facilities and facilities that the residents have for parking or school places and the traffic. So what measures is the council taking to cope up with that? And it's not really nice just to have the high-rise buildings.
Yeah, the problem is we have a massive waiting list, housing list in Feltham and across the borough. So what we've tried to do with our housing programme is house Feltham people. Of course, that means flats, especially around the station, because that has the highest PTAL, and it's the place where people can easily access public transport. But you'll find a lot of us in this room want to see a balance, want to see family homes built as well on those parts of land where we can do that. For example, the Ashmead Road depot, which may become a super depot for the borough, or it may actually be another part of our housing. And also the the MOD site in Lower Feltham. That is earmarked to come online, I believe, in 2025 for family housing. And that's houses, 2 up, 2 down, that sort of thing, 3-bedroom houses. We've worked very hard as councillors on infrastructure and pushed people like the Peabody Trust on their plans here in Feltham for the Sue Ryder site, for runoff, for drainage, sewage, and also infrastructure like school places and doctors' surgeries. And I've had a personal conversation, because I've been involved in this a lot with 1 or 2 others in here, with centre management over parking. We have a multi-storey car park that is over 50% empty all of the time. Now, while we don't want to encourage car ownership for the ecology of the area, etc., it is inevitable that houses and flats come with cars, and they can't just overspill onto our estates. So we have to be adult and have a sensible conversation between the police, the residents, centre management and others, so that we can actually find a home for some of these vehicles without turning our back on our sort of policies to make the environment cleaner and everything. So actually we are engaged, Mimi, in that almost constantly. And I don't know if anyone else wishes to chip in, but Hanif Khan will. But yes, I can assure you we are.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think this question about high-rise flats, which the lady talks about, is that when we look at some of our new housing stock that's come through across the borough, it actually conforms to some of the best quality stock that you'll see across the United Kingdom. And our ability in the council to have built so many social housing has reached national recognition, and the quality of those flats has been recognised nationally, and it is because of the points that the Chair has raised. And also a perfect example in the borough is Convent Way. When we've redone the whole of that housing estate, we have phase by phase, we're knocking down the old buildings and building brand new buildings, and every single one of those residents in those buildings were 100% committed behind that development, and they really appreciated with the engagement that took place and how they felt completely at ease and trusted the council to give them back and return them into much better quality housing. And not only are these housing built they're built to the best technology for the environmental as well. So the council has that as a priority. And the chair, you touched on active travel and healthy living, and one of the things around the station, Feltham Station, as you know, we have had a massive investment in Feltham train station by increasing the platform, which has meant that we could have 10 carriages arrive at the station, which has meant that that station has become into the 21st century. Therefore, people are choosing Feltham as a destination to live and raise their families because they can get into London now so quickly and more frequently. So as the prosperity of Feltham now is increasing significantly because of the investment, one by the west of the area kind of master plan and the development of the town centre, not only with cycle lanes with this new development, the prosperity of Feltham has really increased, which has meant that the quality of people are choosing to drive and use active travel, like cycles. And then you'll see that we've built a beautiful cycle lane straight through our town centre that connects the rest of our borough. So not only is this council, this administration, especially those councillors in Feltham, have understood the issues, that they have also put in the policy to make our stock the best stock in the country, spoken to our residents to make them feel that they can raise a family here in the borough and help with raise the prosperity. So young families who invariably may have lived somewhere else and who work in a city have chosen to come here. All of that benefits the borough. So I understand the challenges that you have. Just the reason why I say all this is because we understand the challenges and we have worked really hard to solve those challenges, and it's an ongoing process as we've had in all of the discussions today. So that's the point I wanted to make, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanif. Candice Atherton.
Thank you. I don't wish to labour the point too much, but just so people have sort of a good understanding, housing is really complex. It's taken me a long time to get my head around it since I've been on the council. But it's really important that community understand that, you know, there's a lot of things that the council can't do when it comes to housing. We know to sort of every single, to the last point, how many people need housing in this borough, how many people are inadequate, how many people are essentially homeless in our borough. So we know what the need is, but the only way we can provide that is working with developers. And, you know, it's the government that allows all the regulation around what developers can do. They will only do projects that they consider viable, so they have to, and they're allowed to make big profits. We've worked really hard. I've never sat on planning, but I know that people who do sit on our planning will not allow developments to go through if there's not a certain percentage of social housing. So we have to do like a merry dance basically with developers to push as hard as we can to make sure that what they want to build meets as closely as possible to what is needed in the community. But there is, you know, there's a gap, a big gap in the middle. So, but we do lots of work. We are, you know, doing really well on how many social houses we have been able to build. I think we're like one of the top in London for building social houses, so I'm really proud of that work. But it's just to assure the community that we're doing everything we can to get the right balance, as Councillor Mitchell has said, and it has, you know, all of this has been said, but it's really important that we are clear about that. Just on the infrastructure around school places, just also to let you know that we are actually reducing, there's actually less children being born or living in the area. So and again, the council works really hard literally every year when it comes to school places. I think we are able to do some amazing kind of matrices and metrics to know what the demand will be, and I think we guess it between like 1 or 2 places, even though some kids go out of the borough and some people come into the borough. So we've got really good teams working on that. So we know at the moment there is actually schools that are reducing numbers of classes and children going into school. So on that area, you don't have to worry just yet. You know, we will always make sure that we've got places for our school children. I lead on adult social care and health, so it's an area that I'm very concerned about around our health services. But again, that's all about numbers. Funding comes by who is registered with GPs, who lives in the area. So that is really closely matched as well. I think probably one of the biggest things around infrastructure is some of the transport stuff. But again, as Councillor Khan has talked about, there's lots of things that we're putting in place around that as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Wow. Round of applause. And of course, all this against the backdrop of social housing being sold off since the 80s and not replaced. So it's finally caught up with us, I suppose. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that. Ooh, move on swiftly to item 9. I believe Jefferson is here to give us an update on the Network Rail project. So this is a quickie, Jefferson. Thank you very much. And can we welcome Jefferson? It's his first time at our West Area Forum. And can you give us your job title, Jefferson? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for that very, very warm welcome. I'm not used to being clapped in, so that's. I will come back again.
Don't thank us too early, Jefferson.
My name is Jefferson Welcome. I'm the Assistant Director for Traffic, Transport and Parking at London Borough of Hounslow. I am here today to give you an update on the recent review in relation to the Feltham Town Centre project. It's going to be very brief. I'm just going to touch upon the key points and I'll be happy to take any questions. The review was carried out at the end of the phase 1 of the Felton Town Centre project, and it was really around understanding some of the challenges around that project and see if there are lessons to be learned. And there were. Some of the key challenges were around program management. It was a very complex project, frankly, and we didn't have adequate program planning for it, and that resulted in some of the challenges we experienced as the project progressed. There's also an issue around the contractor appointed to do the work. There are questions as to whether they were the right contractor for the project, given its complexity. I think on a project as complex as that, you really want to go for a safe option, which is a contractor who's actually done the work, a similar work previously. That wasn't necessarily the case on that occasion. So that's a lesson we've learned. We used basically our PFI contractor who are very good, generally very good in maintenance work, but actually when you're doing very specialist work, there's a question as to whether we should have maybe used much more specialist contractors. There's also an issue around change control and how we managed change across the contract in terms of change to time, change to cost as well as cost management. So there are some of the lessons there to be learned, but I think ultimately it was a very complex project, and perhaps there should have been much more realism in terms of assessing the risk and how it was delivered. In terms of current state, phase 1 and 2 are substantially complete. We're now wrapping up the final accounts for those 2 phases. That's essentially about 95% to nearly 100% complete now. The next phase is phase 3, obviously, and we're hoping to proceed with that in the next financial year.
Okay, thank you, Jefferson. I'll offer it to the floor first. Any questions? We're going to keep this quite brief. Kuldeep Tag.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the third phase in next financial year. Do we have a time frame for that start and end time?
Thanks for the question. No, we are, at the moment, we're still looking to figure out how best to procure that project. So given the lessons we've learned from the first phase, I think we have to make sure we get the procurement right, we get the right contractor for it. So we're still doing our due diligence at this point. But we're hoping to complete that during the early part of the next financial year. Should be in a position to proceed. If not later this calendar year, then certainly very, very early, maybe latter stages Q4 of this financial year, at the very latest.
You're talking about the bridge and the footway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you a follow-up, Kuldeep?
So will we have further opportunity to know about the time frame once it has been ironed out?
Absolutely. We'll come back here to brief members and the community as to our timescales and also next steps.
Candice.
Thank you. I think it's really great to hear all the lessons that have been learned. hopefully that will really impact on phase 3 and going forwards. It would just be a request that we just do everything we can to keep the community up to date with what's happening and opportunities for them to share their concerns and their views and engagement as much as possible, just because we do all remember how hard it was and the things where things went wrong and how much impact that had on our wider community. So just a request that we just do as much engagement as possible. Thanks.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we have certainly applied some of those lessons to the Cycle We're Now project in Chiswick, where we think we could be accused of maybe over-engaging, but we make no apologies for that. We're happy to engage as much as possible and make sure we take everybody on board. Absolutely.
I'm sure Hanif agrees with that. Well, one of the key points we wanted to find out tonight was the delayed public consultation about what actually happened. People want to know when they can actually give their views, their experiences. We haven't said it yet, Jefferson. Can you give us that, please?
Yes. So that was postponed at the onset of the pandemic due to changing priorities, and we had to refocus our resources on other pressing matters. But we intend to carry out that resident survey in the new financial year.
So it's likely to be in the spring, summer?
In this summer.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the only other point I had was about the broken panel in the footbridge, which Hina and I have been chasing for about 6 months. But I don't think that's actually on your watch, is it? That's actually the council and Network Rail sort of. We've got the scars on our back to prove it. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming along, Jefferson. Item 10, we have an item on community infrastructure levy. We're moving at pace now, folks even. And we're fans, yes. And we have Danilee Edmond, who is, she's already sat next to us here on the left. So this is this is the money that comes with developments and things like this. We want to know, and we asked about Feltham and when the money is coming our way and how it's being used and how it will be used. So Danilee, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Chair. Hi, everyone. My name is Danilee Edmond, and I'm the Head of Spatial Planning. So I'm just going to quickly take you through what SIL is, Community Infrastructure Levy, and Section 106. Hopefully I get the person right. Yep, I do. Right, so there was little questions before about infrastructure and whether it's being delivered alongside growth. And the team and I not only set out how homes and jobs go for the next 15 years. We also work with infrastructure providers to ensure that we have infrastructure to accommodate growth. And what we do is there's a big funding issue then. It then becomes, okay, how are we going to fund this infrastructure? And that's where we use SIL and Section 106.4. So SIL is literally a tax on development. So when a developer puts in an application, we tax it. We basically said you need to pay X amount of money in SIL. And Section 106, as Councillor Atherton said, it's negotiation. So it's basically what we negotiate. We negotiate that in terms of affordable housing. We negotiate it in terms of, transport stuff, if they need to fix a junction, if they need to improve a park. And it's very much site-specific. So with regards to SIL, since we've adopted in 2015, we've collected over 24 million from developers. And with Section 106, it's roughly about the same. So we do collect quite a lot of funds from developers to spend on infrastructure projects. And that's basically showing you over the years how much we've collected, roughly about, sometimes 6 million, sometimes 7 million. It depends on year to year, and it basically depends on how much development comes forward, really. What in this slide as well, what it does say is that we also have a duty now. In September 2019, we produce an infrastructure funding statement where we tell the community, this is how much we collect, this is where we collect it, and this is where we're going to spend it in the future. So if you do want to find out, well, what's happening with this money, it's in our website. If you need to just type in Hounslow Infrastructure Statement, and it sets it all out there, so if you're interested in finding out. And what we've done in January Cabinet, so January this year, we've approved a new governance because we want the allocation of SIL in Section 106 to be a bit more dynamic. So we've put in a Cabinet paper to make sure, first and foremost, that we aligned it with our Capital Strategy Board. And for those who don't know what a capital strategy board is, it's where the council decide on funding in general for capital projects across the borough. So we want to align it better with that. But not only that, we want to set out timelines for when we come to allocate SIL in Section 106, so that everyone will know around this time we're going to, ask people for projects to bid for SIL, and around this time we will allocate funding for SIL. So basically that's the new governance. It's basically trying to be a bit more dynamic. Also, what we've got in there is a prioritization matrix. So what we're going to be doing going forward is to make sure that our infrastructure delivery plan, and that's the plan that we work with infrastructure providers such as NHS, school place planning, transport TFL, to actually make sure that the infrastructure delivery plan is dynamic as to, okay, what is in the borough, what is needed to accommodate growth, and where are we going to get the money from? So are we going to get it through SIL, and are we going to get it through Section 106? And that way we negotiate it a bit better and making sure that we actually get more money for the borough than what we showed in the previous slide. So that's more or less the process in terms of community infrastructure governance. It's similar to Section 106 in that the difference is Section 106, as I mentioned before, is negotiations. So SIL is like a tax, where Section 106 is negotiations. And basically what we discovered is if we have the evidence to actually negotiate better, we can get more money. So we're going to have a drive, the team and I, to make sure that we get the evidence to actually get much more money from developers through Section 106. So basically the governance is basically setting out, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure and have the evidence so we can ask for more money. And so what do we do with it when we collect it? Well, basically we allocate it for projects right across the borough. With regards to SIL doesn't need to be spent on where it's collected, but we do have in our infrastructure funding statement map out where we allocate SIL for, and it's very much right across the borough. It's very much related to where it's actually collected. And so what we've done, what we've allocated over the years is stuff like Feltham Majors Transport Scheme. So we touched on that earlier. Stuff like priority cycle routes, just to name a few with regards to transport. With regards to health, Feltham Centre for Health, so making sure that we have enough, facilities to accommodate new residents as well as the existing residents. So we've given them money to expand. We've also given money to school to expand to accommodate, more students if need be, or even refurbishment to actually have better capacity in existing schools. And we allocate quite a lot of money in parks, so our beloved parks and open spaces, we do allocate a lot of money. So you probably see a lot of changes in parks, and it comes a lot from developers' contribution from SIL and Section 106. So this is the range of projects that we've allocated as well. Feltham Marinas, River Crane Corridor, we've actually allocated a lot of money for that going forward, where we try to improve pedestrian access to the River Crane. And a lot of other things like Hanworth Park improvements, cycling facilities in parks, gyms in parks. If you see a gym in a park, it's because it's developers' contribution funded. And then also basically SIL is divided into two pots of money. So 80% we spend on what we think is strategic infrastructure, so big ticket infrastructure, and 15% is what we think it's local SIL. So we ask the community, what do they want to spend it on? What infrastructure is needed in the borough? And that's what 15% of the local SIL goes towards. So we have in the past allocated it for things like, refurbishment of Feltham Hub, all sorts of things that the community feels are very closed. Now, local SIL is part of the thriving communities. So now what we've done is we've given that proportion to thriving communities to do their grant funding and to ask the community what they would like to see improve in their area. And that's a list of projects through the thriving communities. So that's 15% of SIL. So we do have 15% in which we listen to what the community need improving in the area. And basically, with regards to Section 106, this is how much we collected ever since Section 106. So that's, I think it's in the, early 2000s. And as you see, it sets out how much we collected per area forum and how much we've allocated. So with regards to Felton, we've collected roughly about 14 million, and we roughly allocate similar amount in that particular area forum. So where we do get it, we do allocate it, because it's based on, especially for Section 106, it's based on where the development takes place, whereas strategic sale is a bit more wider, but Section 106, it's you actually need to spend it in the area where the development takes place. So that shows that we have been collecting and spending in this area.
Hanif, can we wait for that? No.
And that's because of development. They've got way more development. So if you don't have development, you won't be able to negotiate and get Section 106 in SIL. And this is what we've allocated it. I haven't managed to capture all the projects because it's way back from the early 2000s. So I've tried to pull together some that we have allocated Section 106 for, and things like cycle superhighway, that's kind of borough-wide, I know, roundabout improvements, so a lot of transport projects get funded through there. Affordable housing, as I said, that's where we negotiate affordable housing for. Development of Sparrow Farm, green spaces as well. We do negotiate for even more improvements to green spaces. And what we do as well is we negotiate quite a lot for training program. So for actually training, getting contributions from developers so that we can actually have training programs for our young people. So that's kind of a list of what we've allocated in the past. That's currently with regards to Section 106. And I think that's the end of it, really. Okay. Yep.
Well, thank you, Danelli. For those of us that have pushed for our urban parks, Grosvenor Park, Ludlow Park, it's good to see that it's been backed up and we've got more money coming. It's very positive. It's good stuff. I'll take Richard Foote first, and I see Ragwinder. Right. And we're very tight on time, guys. Can we keep it sharp and short?
Yeah, thank you, Danelli. Virtually every planning meeting that I sit on, I ask for a report on how much money we've collected on SIL and S106, and I ask for where it's been spent. This is the first time I've seen an answer on here. It's
because we asked for it last time.
No, I'm saying I'm asking on planning. Now, I sit on planning, and that's where we collect it, and that's where we should be getting feedback, but we're not getting it. I'm glad to say I was going to ask you a question of the percentage of local SIL as opposed to, and I think you said 13%, did you say? 15%. Okay. But one of the factors, and I don't know, we talk about it being in areas where there's development taking place is where it's going to be spent. But places like Hanworth and Bedfont don't have that development. So they have to fight tooth and nail to get SIL and S106 money, which just, the only one S106 money we had in Hanworth got diverted to a church. And we never got it in Greater Hanworth. It just went in one spot, which, was quite upsetting when we saw that we'd been tricked. It's those sort of things that we really need people to be more forthright when we ask questions about SIL and 106, where it's coming from, how much we've collected, where it's being spent. We need more forthcoming, and we need more input. As members, we need more input. But if we don't have information, it's very difficult to have an input, and that's where we're at the moment.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, points on information and how it's shared there. Danelli, do you want to respond to that briefly?
Yeah, sorry, apologise. It's the first time I'm hearing about that. But yes, and every time you get a query on SIL in Section 106, we're always happy to give a report on how much we collected and how much... But with regards to where it's allocated and spent, unfortunately, the regulations say it needs to be spent where the development takes place. With regards to mainly Section 106, but the SIL regulation also said it meant to deal with the cumulative impact of development. So where there is a lot of development that has pressure on infrastructure, it's where you direct strategic SIL on.
That's strategic?
Yes. Local SIL, it's in the area sometimes as well where it's collected, wanting to hear from the community as to where to spend it on most of the times.
That's the lose-lose.
Well,
okay, can I bring in Ragwinder? Ragwinder's got a question, please.
Thank you, Chair. Danley, this unallocated balance of 800,000, what actually that means? Is that money still lying down? What's that money all about?
It's money that hasn't been allocated, so it's there. So we do a call for projects, and we say we've got X amount of money.
So 800,000 is lying down for Feltham, Hanworth, and Bedfont, and so how long this money was lying down? From like 5 years, 10 years? How long we had this money for?
800,000. It's not much, so it probably would be collected over like a space of a year. In the grand scheme of Section 106. Okay. We basically get roughly about 5 million a year. Yeah.
So this money, this is 15% of Section 106. Right?
Section 106 is different from SIL. So SIL is with regards to 80%, 15%. Okay. Section 106 is with regards to the legal agreement. So it's basically where development takes place, we negotiate and we put it into a legal agreement.
So we have 800,000 in unallocated. So that's yearly accumulation. And then if we have a like 4-year plan, so that will in normal times, so how you plan this to spend, like in a year, 2 years, so how it work out?
It depends. It's really depends on the project. So legal agreement, it's very specific as to what project you spend it on. So it goes back to the service areas to then, work out where it is in their program. Is it a priority? When will they actually have the resources to deliver that project? So it's purely based on...
Very short one.
Can I just hold on, Ragwinder? Sorry, excuse me, Ragwinder. I'm suspending standing orders. Can I have a seconder of that? Thank you, Hanif. Ragwinder, briefly, carry on.
So how we can engage the members, I sit in planning. So how we can, in this area,
influence it.
Yes, how we can engage the councillors more. How when you're making the strategy. So we want more input in that instead of officers dealing with because we are the one who are in the wards and see where it has to be spent.
So we talk about a new governance, and then we talk about producing an infrastructure delivery plan. And in the infrastructure delivery plan, we will set out what infrastructure is needed to accommodate growth. And the idea is to actually accommodate the views from members and community, and as well as infrastructure providers. So that's hopefully going to come soon. But just to let you know, there's a very stringent regulation that applies to Section 106. It needs to pass the 3 statutory tests. So it needs to be directly related to development. It needs to mitigate that particular development impact. So you could suggest a project, but if it doesn't meet the 3 statutory tests, planners can't negotiate for it. So so it's that kind of thinking and thought.
Okay, Danley. Bishnu Gurung.
Thank you, Chair. It is really nice to see Danley here after a long time. Yeah, when I was in the planning committee, we were work together. Today, my question is, I just want to clarify from you that's whether the seal money we can use wherever is generate the project, that's the area that we use, or we can use that money any area?
So that's a good question. So SIL is divided into strategic SIL and local SIL. So strategic SIL, what it says, you can use it anywhere in the borough, but it needs to mitigate the impact of cumulative development. So you can't allocate strategic SIL for an area that has no development because it's not mitigating anything there. So in that way, it's not very much you have to spend it where you collect it, but there's very general principles that you have to follow, like it needs to have development to have an impact on infrastructure to direct it there. Now, local SIL, that's a 15%. And before, when it was under local SIL, it used to be where you used to spend it where the development takes place. You get feedback from the community where they